You are down with.
Yo, Dave.
What up?
Drop the beat.
We like it old school. You know how we do this.
What you listening to?
The brothers from the 818.
91331.
Pacoima, California.
What's up, Dave?
What's up, Caleb?
The real, the raw, the relevant.
No script.
We invite you into our conversation. What's going on, people?
Let me just say this.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
You are down with.
The brothers from the 818. And she shall receive the honor. What's going on, people? You are back with the brothers from the 818. My name is Dave, as you know, kicking it with my man Caleb like we do every week. Caleb, what's going on with you?
Hey, man, it is wonderful to be back with you, David. I can't wait for this podcast to come out. I know people are going to love it. I'm so excited. I didn't even sleep last night. There was a lot going on in my mind because I was just giddy about having our guests join us tonight.
Yo, man, me too. And before we get to our guest, I just want to point out that this month, we really want to dedicate all of our episodes to women that are doing amazing things. Okay. And I got to start off with one, just because today is my mama's birthday, man. It's her heavenly birthday. Today, she would have been 83 years old. Sent out a post this morning. And, I always love my mama. She is my favorite girl. And I posted a picture. She was 34. I was 2, sitting on her lap with my fresh Dapper Dan slacks and Frankenstein shoes. And it's just a beautiful picture that I always have. And people gave some good feedback. And my mom was truly a beautiful woman. And so just all honor due, man. The man I am came from the mama that raised me. And even though she's gone, I know she's always here. And just knowing that she's a part of everything I do. And I give her honor every day. But in respect of Women's History Month and just thinking about beautiful women and women who are doing amazing things, I can't let that go without celebrating my mama. So I just got to start there. What about you?
Today, I honored my mother at work. I was hosting a meeting, and before the meeting started, I had some Al Green playing. Al Green was my mother's favorite artist. And, when I started the meeting, I explained the reason why Al Green was playing. And I explained that my mother was born in a small town in Louisiana. The name of the town is Manning. A lot of people don't know Manning, Louisiana. You won't even find it on a map if you looked. But my mother, she passed 10 years ago. When she was 75. And today and all month, we should recognize our mothers. I love the fact that you posted a picture of your mother for everyone to see you in your glory at the age of 2. So I love that, brother.
Yeah, man, it got a lot of positive feedback, and it's a picture I see often, but just seeing people's response, even my children was like, "Hey, Granny, we miss you." I was like, wow, even my children are responding on social media. Wow. So that's big. I just wanted to make sure we gave some love to that. I made another post today, just so you know, for all the women that have been part of the Brothers from the 818, man, getting this set up. And so just want to take a little time to give them some love. I have to start off with my boo, Ilana and Tonya, them Brown girls,
Brown girls.
We introduced them and brought their podcast back. They had us come on theirs. I think we're going to have them as a guest for our next episode. You had 2 friends of yours come on.
Yeah, that was Deb and Shay, and they blessed us. That was right after Jada and Will Smith fiasco, right? The entanglement, right? And so they blessed us, and we were really happy to have them on. And we said that they'll be back for our 100th episode, and so we're looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, and Lil Ritz from the 07304.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
She was on our Father's Day episode, gave a lot of love to her father, and just a big fan of the show. One of our Pacoima natives, Chef Roxy, big fan of the show, big supporter. We in turn also support her. She's an 818 favorite. Somebody special in both of our lives. Miss Iman Ashanti, she was on one of our episodes. We did Battle of the Generations. Sister Carol was on there. So we've had just some amazing women come in and support our efforts and what we're doing. Way back in the beginning when the podcast, I forgot, your queen.
Yeah. My wife.
The wife was on one of our early episodes. This is before we had backdrops and layouts, and we were just switching camera positions. So when we got started, she was a big part of that as well. So to all of y'all, we just appreciate you. We love you. We honor you. We know that the Brothers from the 818 would not be where we are without people willing to invest with us as we built this show up from a single video with nothing to do with it to the powerful episode we are going to have today. You ready for this?
Yeah, man, nothing but gratitude to those ladies that you mentioned. I picked up my cup to highlight my daughter, Iman, Ashanti Bea, for all the work that she's doing. And, she has some swag. So I picked up her swag and I was enjoying that. But I'm ready for this. No more. Let's not hesitate anymore. Let's bring on our guest today.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. So tonight, to start off our dedication to women for this month, we have a phenomenal woman, Madam Mayor, the mayor of Tustin, California, is joining us tonight. Madam Mayor, Mrs. Letitia Clark. Welcome to the Brothers from the 818.
Hey, Brothers from the 818. It's good to be with you tonight. Thank you.
It is so good to have you. Thank you for agreeing to be on our show. Thank you for spending this time with us. How are you? I'm
good. 2021 has already proven to be an interesting year. It's interesting being a virtual mayor, so to speak. So just working every day to do the work that God's called me to do. So it's a journey every day, that's for sure.
I'm just going to say amen to that.
Amen.
So the floor is yours, Madam Mayor. And let me just say this. So we recognize you are the mayor of Tustin. Anyone who's a fan of the show knows we've had this conversation before about what to refer people as. And so I want to give you that liberty we give you all honor as Madam Mayor. And we will continue that. If you want us to call you something different, please say so. But you earned that right. And we on the Brothers from the 818, we want to make sure that we give you the respect and love that's due to you, not only as an amazing and phenomenal woman, but as the mayor, we want to give you that right. So go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, and we'll go from there.
Well, first, thank you for that deference about the title. I think, I appreciate that you put some respect on that because, I worked hard for it. And I think with women, we often are not called by our titles, particularly in politics. And I've noticed in my experience, I'm often given a nickname right away, especially because my first name, Letitia, is not, the easiest to pronounce. So, I get called by my counterparts, LC or hey, L, and it's just, sometimes it can feel very demeaning, especially if we have not established a rapport where there is some, consent that, hey, yes, we're going to be on a first name basis. So I feel like sometimes the respect of the title is diminished a little bit without permission. So I appreciate that you asked, and yes, let's please be on first name basis during the podcast. But no, thank you for having me on. I was selected to be mayor on the Tustin City Council in December. And I mentioned selected because here in Tustin and many of the cities, I'm in Orange County, which is a little, south of you all, we are what would be considered smaller or more medium-sized cities. So the city of Tustin has about 83,000 people in the city. So we don't have an independently elected mayor, mainly because of the size of our city. So we rotate the mayor position. However, it's not guaranteed that any of us will have the mayor position. So I still have to earn the votes from my colleagues And in the past, politics have been, used for that position because it is somewhat of a position of influence. And so we've seen members on the council serve as mayor several times, either consecutively or, what may be considered out of turn. So it was no guarantee that I'd be mayor, but coincidentally, when I ran for reelection and then was successful as the #1 vote getter, then my colleagues also selected me as mayor. So 2020 was a good year in that regard. But in many ways, I'm often asked to talk about my experience as being the first Black woman on the council, and now the first Black female mayor, and then also the first female mayor that the council has had in almost 20 years.
Wow.
So there have been women on the council, but they have not served as mayor for nearly 2 decades. And while we shouldn't still be talking about first or, that gap of time, in 2021, I do feel honored to be able to serve during this time. I feel like the environment to talk about equity and inclusion and social justice and environmental justice and, just a lot of areas that are going to move our communities forward and prepare us for the future are really being dealt with in a serious way right now. So I feel lucky to be in a leadership position to, be at the table during this time. So while, it's hard to still say, well, there's a first this and a first that, we're just trying to break down some of those doors here in Orange County. So I feel blessed to be able to be one of those people, kicking down some of these doors and making it easier for others to do that here in Orange County. And for those that don't know much about Orange County, the county as a whole, we have more than 3 million people here, made up of 34 cities. So it's a large metropolitan area. And I think some of the conceptions about it being extremely conservative, extremely Caucasian, those are perceptions that I think are dwindling. We are changing here in Orange County. We are becoming a majority minority county, and we have a lot of people of color. Now we're spread out. You won't find certain communities that just have all the same type of, racial or ethnic makeup, but we are changing a lot in Orange County. And I would say it's a good opportunity for people of color to start looking at opportunities for leadership in the private and the public sector, and particularly in politics. So again, I feel fortunate to be, kind of able to lead some of that effort. And actually, before I got on this call with you all, I had a call with another former Black mayor in La Palma, who you may not have heard of, Marshall Goodman. And him and I were just talking about how do we work to get more Black people elected in Orange County, period. And there's only a few of us right now, but we're really talking about leaving a legacy, beyond ourselves. And to us, that means making it easier for Black folks to come into Orange County, lead effectively, and then give them some guidance about how to navigate this tough environment. Because in some ways it can be difficult, mainly because you have to build alliances here. You're not going to find, just a Black community that's able to support you. You have to find alliances in other communities, and it has to be broad, but you can also be proud of who you are, and that authenticity will also help you be successful. So we had a whole conversation about, legacy, leaving, and building. But folks should know that I grew up here in Orange County, a product of this area. My dad was born here, which is actually also very rare. He was one of the first, well, not one of the first, he was the first African-American baby born at Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach. Wow. My grandparents came here when they were 19 and 20 years old. My grandfather was in the Marines. That brought him here. So they've, when someone says maybe that I don't belong here or that I don't have a place here in Orange County, I say this is more my home than it is other folks. So this is home, and I feel at home here. I don't feel out of place because my family roots are so strong here. But I went to an HBCU. I attended Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans. And I always, and that's why I think I'm so passionate about the equity and inclusion and the representation discussions we're having now, because when I went to Xavier, and I'm sure we can get into this later, but I learned that high expectations were required. I was always kind of treated like I was special or different, or, wow, you're so articulate. Wow, you're so smart and talented. It was like I was an anomaly here in Orange County. When I went to Xavier, everyone was like that. And we were expected to do even more. We were expected to be remarkable and excellent. And that stuck with me. And it made me feel like I could literally do anything. And so going to an HBCU was one of the best decisions I ever made, especially growing up in a place like Orange County where I didn't get to see Black excellence all around me. But it was there that I learned. I saw Black people doing amazing things. So representation truly does matter. I had to see it in order to believe it and achieve it. Like, that's a real thing. Mm-hmm. And I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And so my major was pre-law, but I changed it to political science after I started working kind of like part-time to make extra money on campaigns in New Orleans. And I saw so many women running for office, Black women running for office. And I didn't even know that was a possibility here in the OC. So I changed my major to political science, started working in New Orleans at City Hall. And right into kind of my entry-level position, Hurricane Katrina struck the city. And I found myself on the front line just responding to everything that was thrown at the city. But it taught me a lot about public service, about the importance of local government, because we were on the front lines. And so all of that kind of shaped where I am today, just all those experiences. So I'll stop talking, but that's kind of my story in a nutshell, because all of that led me, to be the mayor of this town we call Tustin here in Orange County.
First of all, I want to thank you for joining us on the Brothers from the 818. I appreciate you giving us your time. You mentioned Louisiana, and David and my check-in. I talked about my mother growing up in Louisiana, Manning, Louisiana. You mentioned Katrina, and I was in Louisiana about a week or two before Katrina hit. I was on my way to Iraq at that time. And when I actually arrived in Kuwait, I learned about Katrina hitting Louisiana. And you mentioned about legacy. David and we talk about legacy all the time. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. In one of the things you said early on is that you're learning to deal with being a virtual mayor. Give us a look into a day in the life of the mayor of Tustin. What does that look like for you?
So on a daily basis, I feel like I'm putting out fires. It's calls from the city manager. It's calls from the different department heads about addressing constituent concerns. There are a lot of people that just kind of want some FaceTime with the mayor, and we're doing that via Zoom. There's actually sometimes a misconception about what the mayor can do, especially when it's what we call not a strong mayor. A strong mayor would be an elected mayor. And so there is some different executive power that an elected mayor has versus one that's appointed amongst the council. So that's kind of an interesting education process sometimes for the community. But I really work hand in hand with the city manager, who essentially serves as the CEO of the city, because he manages all the staff, and the city manager is the only employee that the council actually hires. And we are really not supposed to be directing other staff. That's over our purview. That's his or her job. But yeah, it's a lot of calls with him. It's negotiating contracts or lawsuits. And then on top of kind of just the day-to-day business, then there comes my goals that are often broader, loftier, more laser focused. I started an interfaith council, a nonprofit council. I'm starting a diversity, equity, and inclusion committees. So I meet with these groups on a regular basis. I have a real passion about transparency and communication. So on a monthly basis, we shoot a video that goes out. I have a lot of communication that goes out to constituents, and we're trying to develop an app right now, a city app, so that they can report graffiti or homeless or, broken street lights or, whatever it is on this app. So it's kind of like just checking in on all these goals that I have to make sure that there's constant work on those. But so it's all consuming. It's a full-time job, no doubt about it. And then part of it is also just making sure that I'm posting and doing things that are visible on social media. I don't have a staff that does any of that. I'm in charge of all that. Plus, I maintain a full-time job. I'm the government relations director for a community college district here in Orange County. So I kind of say I'm the Olivia Pope of the community colleges. Often it's my job to just fix it. If a faculty member has an issue or the board of trustees has an issue, excuse me, it's my job to just, do the PR that's associated with it, the public affairs, but then also stay in touch with all of our electeds to make sure that we're, advocating on behalf of the community colleges. So it's a full-time job. Plus I have a family, a husband and twins. So I'm also planning to release a children's book this summer. It's going to be called Mommy is the Mayor. And it's kind of giving kids an insight of what the mayor does through my kids' eyes. Because early when I ran for office, they didn't quite understand, what a city council member would do, what the mayor does. And they were 9 when I first ran. And now that they're 13, they have a much better understanding. But the book is about, showing that everything from a stop sign to a playground at a park to when the sirens go by, that a mayor has a hand in all of those things that kind of, help a city just be clean and safe and functioning. So, those are just kind of the things I'm working on a regular basis.
That's all so amazing. It's interesting, that book. I love books. I love children's books. I look forward to, Dr. Seuss month. So we read books. As you know, you may know, I'm in education, and I hold a position in the district where every once in a while my kids are like, well, my dad is the ex, so he can take care of that. So I can only imagine, well, my mom's the mayor, so say something else and watch what happened. Right?
Actually, my kids, they downplay it. They don't want people to know, because I think even they've seen how folks start to treat them differently, for better or for worse, when they mention that. So they asked me not to mention it, to their friend. They just want to be regular. They don't want to be the mayor's kids. They just want to be regular kids and, invited to the parties because they're cool, not me. Right. So
back to school night, a whole new vision when the mayor shows up.
Right.
So you mentioned a couple of things that I really want to tag on before I get to my next question. You said, that in 2021, we shouldn't keep talking about first. And I hear that. But if we're going to stop talking about first, then we got to get some more seconds and thirds and fourths to happen consecutively, right? Because we still have way too many firsts, and we still look at too many things that are the exception, right? Especially within our community. And until we can start looking at those exceptions as the rules, then we're going to have a lot of firsts, and we need to give the people that recognition. You are the first Black woman to mayor the city of Tustin. And as you said, in almost 20 years, the first woman to be in that position. And whether that's a first or a fifth, it's worthy of bringing up. Right. Absolutely. And if they don't want to bring it up next time, then let whoever follows you be another one, and who follows her to be another one, and so forth. And then we'll stop talking about it. So I wanted to throw that out there. But you mentioned, 2020. You said something that I haven't heard many people say. And I say it privately, especially in the mirror, because I don't want to disrespect anyone who had hard times in 2020. Right. I thrived, honestly, during 2020. So did Caleb. He hates when I put his business out there, but since we're here, you know, he thrived, and you know, I kept my job, which I was blessed to do. My children are healthy, you know, and you know, things kept moving. But you said, you know, 2020 was a great year. Then you paused and said, you know, in that regard. But looking at 2021, we're in the third month. This is officially March, which I can't believe, right? We're deep in 2021 now, but there's some remnants, right? And there's some things that in 2019 we said, oh, we would never do that. And in 2021, we're saying now we do that and more, right? It's taking us to the next level. You mentioned, so you've been on the city council now, I believe, since 2016.
That's right.
You were first elected. So, and this is your first virtual year.
Right.
What activities do you see you doing now that are going to make 2022, when maybe you're not virtual, that much better, or even beyond? What tools have you started to utilize that are going to be your new normal?
That's a great question. And I don't think anyone's asked me this question yet, but I've definitely thought about it. And mainly, I mentioned that transparency is huge for me and communication. So government has always kind of, you know, gotten a C or a D in this area in terms of being extremely accessible, extremely flexible in terms of making sure that every member of the public can actively participate. And this was just kind of always an issue for me. I mean, I was talking about providing childcare at some of our council meetings before the pandemic, because what I was seeing consistently, especially about controversial issues, was a certain type of person from our community that seemed like they had the means to afford to care about some of the issues that were on the agenda. You know, if they mentioned that they had to hire a babysitter, okay, you had the means to hire a babysitter to come down and maybe wait for hours to express your opinion. And so I always thought, okay, what about the working family? What about the family who has 2 or 3 jobs and can't even afford to look at the agenda? When do we hear from them? And how do we ensure that their voice is being heard? So now we're in an age where we're learning how to do virtual pretty well. And we're finding out how to even merge the virtual with the live. So to me, there will be no more excuses about why we can't make it accessible and flexible for people to make public comments from home, via Zoom, via computer, via phone, once we get out of the pandemic. I don't even know how we ethically say, now we're going to go back to, you have to show up in person at 7:00 at night, wait around 3 hours to make a public comment on a controversial issue. I don't know how we ethically do that, because we know it's possible. So for me, yeah, really looking into that public participation part of government that is so important. And it's frankly how marginalized communities continue to be left out, because we assume that we're not hearing from their voice because they don't care. And that's just not the case. And I do believe we have to, if we can't be more proactive in getting to some of these communities, we do have to be more flexible and accessible. We're also seeing, you know, mobile things become more prevalent. We are providing vaccines and testing through mobile devices. So we're getting in vans, going to neighborhoods, offering services. I don't know why we wouldn't be able to do that after the pandemic. If there are services that we provide through Parks and Rec, if there are meals that are being provided by the senior center, explain to me how we cannot put this in a van and go to the neighborhoods that need it after the pandemic, because that's what we're doing right now. And we're noticing how many families we have that are, or, you know, people that we have that are bedridden, that have transportation issues or mobility issues. So that's going to be huge. I think also working on treating broadband like a public service, that this is now something that everyone needs in order to be on an equal level playing field. So having to go to McDonald's for Wi-Fi is not going to be acceptable. We're going to have to pour in resources to make sure that neighborhoods that are families and areas that can't afford increasingly expensive Wi-Fi services, that they have this, especially if we're going to incorporate it in all of our functions. So yeah, I'm definitely looking at making sure that some of these flexible arenas stick around because it does provide a lot of equity across the board.
It's my new sticker. If you can't be proactive, be flexible. I love that. I'm about to sell that one. We're gonna put that on a shirt, Caleb.
Okay.
Be proactive, be flexible.
Yeah.
Hashtag Letitia for mayor. What would that be? 2024 when you run?
I love that. I love that. And here I am. I have a sheet full of notes. David mentioned that I don't like him putting my business out there, but because we have Mayor Clark joining us tonight, I'm going to behave. But I do have a sheet full of notes, and what you said about broadband being essential really resonated with me. David and I, we early on in the pandemic, we were talking about what is essential, right? And people were running out and getting toilet paper, right? And we've already had that podcast about things that are essential. But I did collect. I was collecting a lot of notes as if I was going to be running for mayor one day, and because a lot of the things that you mentioned really speaks to my everyday life. I work for Los Angeles County, and a lot of the work that I do involves marginalized communities and disproportionality. So I appreciate that. I do have a question in regards to gender. As a woman, do you feel that your approach is any different than your male counterparts in politics?
Absolutely. It shows up in the weirdest times. I think sometimes, and I think I have to experience a double-edged sword sometimes because I'm a Black female. I would say the majority of people I interact with that are not part of the community as residents or constituents are developers, are investors, are anybody kind of pitching a business in the city, and 80% of them are Caucasian men. And I feel like often there is a lot of mansplaining going on. For your viewers to know what mansplaining is. There is this surprise, like you mentioned earlier, that somehow I'm just this exception to the rule. So they're very surprised that I'm articulate and intelligent and knowledgeable. But then once we get past that, then they question my savviness as it comes to politics. They just assume that I can't be strategic or savvy when it comes to navigating the political system. So sometimes I'm like, I don't know if that's because I'm a woman or because I'm Black. I can't always put my finger on it, but I know that it's something and I deal with it on a regular basis. I'm kind of, some of those microaggressions.
It's both. It's both. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. No, you're right.
Go ahead.
And so that can be, it weighs on me because it feels like I'm going into an interview every time I have a meeting with a constituent who's asking me for something. And here I am trying to prove myself to them that, we can have a peer-to-peer conversation. So yeah, it definitely comes up. But I think being a woman does give me a different perspective. I'll give you an example. We were going through some negotiations with a lawsuit recently, and my colleagues wanted to reach an agreement, and they wanted to call it a non-combative agreement, something like that. And I was like, can't we just call it a cooperative agreement? Like, why does it? Oh, it was called a non-aggression agreement. And I was like, what? Even in the semantics, I said, that's a little much, and we're already, framing it as though, yeah, you're lucky we're not going to be aggressive with you. But it was just kind of a totally different perspective. And I was the only woman at the table. So I just immediately thought I wanted to come, at it in a different way. So I see it show up every now and then in a strange way. And I think as a woman, I often, although sometimes I resent being asked about. So I'll give you an example. I'm always asked about where my kids are. Where are your kids? Who's watching them? What, how are they being taken care of? I never hear my male colleagues be asked about their kids. It's never a concern. If I want to take on a new position on a board or a new committee role, everyone always asks me, well, how are you going to juggle all that? Are you sure you have the bandwidth to do that? They never ask my male colleagues that. They say, hey, if you want to take it on, take it on. And so I find that as a challenge, and I can't help but think that that is a gender, bias, intentional or not. However, I do often think about my family when I'm making decisions, because I think about other families who have to take that into account when they're, either accessing a service or, advocating for something in their community. I don't look at them as an individual. I look at them as a family unit, because that's how I make decisions. So I don't know. I think it plays a role both positively and negatively, but to me, for the most part, it speaks to why we need that diversity, gender-wise, racial makeup, but most of all, perspective. That's what different than people bring to the table, a different perspective. So you're looking at issues differently. There was a time where our council was primarily made up of retired individuals, because it was just the perception that you could only dedicate the time needed if you were retired. But then you're also going to get a certain set of policies passed by people who aren't concerned about being in the working environment anymore, who aren't concerned with traffic from, the morning to the evening, all those things. They're just not in that space. And so I noticed that even though it's been difficult to navigate having a full-time job and being on the council, more people think now they can actually do the job, and they can be on the council and have a job. But we have to change. Maybe meetings won't be at 10 o'clock in the morning every day. Maybe we won't have to have food at every meeting. Just certain things that change when the perspectives change on the council. And I think having a good balance of gender, racial makeup, but most of all, perspective is crucial.
Letitia, in complete transparency, I'm one of those male colleagues. And I'm so thankful for not only the women that I've worked with or the women that I'm in school with and different professionals along that line who's actually educated me in that sense. Like, when's the last time you went on an interview and someone asked you about your 10-year plan, worried about if you're going to have kids and get pregnant, right? And things along those lines. When I say, or even when someone needs me to work late, and I'm a single father, no one says, well, who's going to take care of the kids, right?
But that's a real concern for you.
Yeah, it's a real concern for you, but no one asks, and so forth. And so we look at those things as men and take for granted that we never got asked those questions. But because that we've been in environments with women in power, women in authority, women who are chasing the same dreams we are, if you just slow down long enough to listen or have a courageous conversation, you'll find out that, yeah, these are real things. So I appreciate you highlighting that, not only for us, but for our listeners and viewers. But it's a very real thing to recognize that there is that dual standard. And it's not oftentimes what's said, it's what's assumed and applied simply because of your gender. So thank you for sharing that. So we're getting close to the end, but I have to stage this up and just kind of, gauge your thoughts on it. So, this country's changed, obviously. When I grew up, when Caleb grew up, and we're a few years older than you, but, we grew up in that realm of, you can be anything you want, including president. We're like, yeah, okay, sure. There's no examples of that, right? But okay, yeah, we can be anything we want. I get it. Work hard is what you're trying to say. Why don't you just say that? But my kids, Caleb's kids, they've grown up in an era where the first president that they likely remember and engage with happened to be a Black man. Right. Even today, we have a Black woman, Kamala Harris, as vice president, and could likely, move into the presidential seat in 4 years, right? And so we're seeing a lot of changes. But you're the fulfillment of that dream. Quite honestly, my mom, Caleb's mom, our generation produced a hope. But you're the substance behind that hope. You made it happen. And so little girls, and I don't have a lot of experience in this area. I'm not one, and never have been one. And I don't even have any daughters, but little girls we might have one of our guests or one of our viewers that has a daughter that says, this is what I want you to see. This is what I'm talking about. What do you say to her? Right. And I think you have a daughter as well, right?
I do have a daughter.
You as mommy. What do you say to the daughter, to the little girl that sees you as mayor?
Yeah. It's so important. I mean, the representation, the seeing it being done in front of your eyes, I think is so important for this next generation. I started a girls in government program too in Tustin for that very reason, to highlight all the women who work in City Hall, to show our girls in our community. This could be you too. You could be working in finance or be in, in Parks and Rec or whatever. And these are jobs that can give back to your community. And I mentioned a council member that I, emulated and followed a lot of her path because I saw it. But my mom told me that I actually wanted to be a lawyer growing up because I wanted to do whatever Claire Huxtable did. I said, whatever, I don't know what she does, but I want to do what she does. And my mom said, oh, she's a lawyer. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So I had this whole path to become a lawyer because of what I saw in Claire Huxtable. Mm-hmm. And so that representation is huge. What I say to any young girl is to, yes, shoot for the stars. Don't let other people's fears stop you from achieving, what you want to do. Also know that you are equipped with everything that you need in order to succeed right now. Even if you don't get another degree, if you don't get another letter of recommendation or additional training, you are prepared to succeed in several areas right now. And so I like the quote from Zig Ziglar that says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start in order to be great. Mm-hmm. So just start, just go for it. Don't let fear get in the way, get out of your own head. But we often put so many expectations on ourselves. Well, let me finish school. Let me do this. Let me have my family. Let me move to this area. Let me get this certain wardrobe. Then I'll be ready. Just start. And you will find yourself succeeding and achieving those goals way earlier than you ever thought you could, because you didn't let anything stop you. But usually we are our own barriers in achieving greatness.
Well, I feel like you've given us a number of hashtags for our shirts, right? Now okay. you're gonna see in Tustin, we're gonna be rocking Just Start.
Yeah.
You're gonna see. I really did love your how you explain perspective. And on the Brothers from the 818, we often talk about the raw, the real, the relevant, and now we might even need perspective, because you brought that to our podcast tonight. And hopefully our listeners, as David kind of laid it up for our listeners, maybe they will share this podcast with their daughters, with their family members, with their sons. And so they can see an example like you, Mayor Clark, that is really how we would say it on the Brothers from the 818, you're doing the dang thing, right? And so you are doing it, and you are representing our community, and I just love that. So thank you for giving us your time. But if you've ever listened to the Brothers from the 818, you know how we like to end our show.
Yes.
What are you listening to?
So it's funny. My kids now, they're 13, and all of a sudden, all these 90s groups and 90s styles are like new to them. So my daughter right now has the box braid, Jada Pinkett style bob going on from Set It Off. My son has the flat top, and they're looking at all the throwback jerseys stuff. So I've been like into my 90s music right now, D'Angelo and Brandy and Jade and Mary J. And I'm just like, y'all, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this, right? Like, I know This is what I grew up in, and you guys are hearing all this new trap music sampling. Like,
By the way, that's another hashtag for us.
You know what I'm saying, like, it's just so funny to see them, kind of, oh, I know that song, at the way that we used to listen to Biggie and Diddy, and they were sampling the Isley Brothers, and the way my parents were like, that's old, y'all.
Right.
So I feel the same way. So I've been listening to a lot of 90s mixes lately, and just kind of reminiscing on back in the day.
Yeah.
I need a moment.
I shared what I was listening to already. I was listening to some Al Green,
right?
And even after I finished with my meeting, I continued to listen to Al Green. So I'll ask David, what are you listening to?
Man, I got a story to tell. So that'll help you lead into it. I was in the car with my middle child, watching I Got a Story to Tell, don't judge me, and asked him, say, hey, what's your favorite music? And he kind of looked at me and he said, whatever you like. And it reminded me of Coming to America, which I'm gonna get to in a moment, right? But I was like, all right, well, since there in a moment, I was like, you know who Biggie is, right? And he was like, yeah, that's the guy that's on the back of Xavier's jersey. I was like, you know anything else about him? So I was like, let me send you an album if you'll listen to it. So he listened to Ready to Die, and he said he really liked it. And he asked, what's next?
A starter, right? Ready to Die is a starter album.
Yeah. And so I gave him Life After Death. He's going to listen to that. He probably started listening to it tonight. So introducing my middle high school child into some Biggie. But I mentioned Coming to America, and I won't get into the commentary for the movie, but there's a remix of a Prince song. And anybody who knows me knows I love some Prince. So I've been listening to Get Off real loud in the car, especially when I pull up to my neighborhood, which is another story, Letitia, that had to do with my birthday party and my neighbors calling the police on me. So now when I come home, I listen to music rather loud. You want to call? Go ahead, right? It's like that. So that's what I've been listening to. A little bit of Prince, a little bit of Biggie, right? Just keeping it going. So
love it.
That's what's up. But yeah, you're chasing our heart, Letitia. Now I'm comfortable because you talk about 90s D'Angelo and Mary J. Blige, and that's just part of the normal playlist,
right?
Yeah. So my radio station 1970, I guess. So that's just the way that goes. Yeah. But we can't thank you enough. Honestly, you gave us just some beautiful words and some wisdom, and we just loved your passion, how you opened it up, and as Caleb said, I'm gonna stutter my way through it, but you doing the dang thing, right? It's an honor to know you. One, it's an honor to know you're there. As you mentioned earlier, that seat at the table, right? And that you're willing to fight that fight, right? Because you can easily sit there and just kind of play the middle. But you're saying, no, while I'm here, I want to make a difference. This is what I want to do. And from the different groups that you started with the young girls or the equity and inclusion or focusing on the transparency, you're right. Government gets a C, D on that because no one's going to tell us how to do our job when really the transparency is about letting people understand that we work for you. Right. And we're here to make your life easier. So I'm not in the Tustin voting community, but you got my vote. And in that you're building a legacy and looking out to how to increase the number of people that look like us that can run for office and show them how to navigate those waters. My hat's off. That's all I got. So I just appreciate you spending that time with the brothers from the 818 tonight. Thank you from the bottom of our heart.
Thank you. I'm going to leave you with one more tagline.
Okay.
One more hashtag. If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And if we as Black people, we actually understand more than, how someone in a marginalized, underserved community, what struggles they encounter. So I encourage all those who may live in a community where it doesn't even look like you can still represent those marginalized communities because you understand the barriers. So be that seat at the table so that we're not all on the menu for consumption, but you can advocate for other people that don't look like you, but have had similar experiences and have similar concerns, and you can represent them well. So I encourage you, if you have that desire in your heart, to go for it.
So, hey, you know what we've been listening to, and now you have always been listening to the brothers from the 818 with our very special guest, Madam Mayor, the first Black woman to mayor the city of Tustin ever, and the first woman to hold that position in almost 20 years. And she shared her wisdom, her nuggets, her hashtags with us and with you, and we can't thank her enough. For all of you out there, you can catch us on YouTube and Facebook. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and of course on our website, The Brothers from the 818. We thank you for spending this time with us. And Caleb, what you got to tell them?
I just, first, usually I just throw up the piece. Mayor Clark, I want to express my gratitude and appreciation. Now, peace.
Peace.
You
Thanks, guys.
are down with
The brothers from the